AITA for leaving my ex with her friends after she cheated out of spite? I, a 34-year-old man, was convinced that Amanda, also 34, was the person I was going to share the rest of my life with. It was not just a stable relationship. It was a life built step by step, with clear plans, shared goals, and a sense of security I thought was unbreakable. However, all of that came crashing down the day I discovered she was having an affair, and not just with anyone, but with her best friend's boyfriend. Even now, I keep trying to understand exactly when everything started to break. It was not a huge argument or an obvious crisis. If anything defines what I went through, it is precisely the absence of clear signs. Everything seemed normal, even good. Amanda and I had been together for 7 years, married for 5 of them. We shared a house in the suburbs of Denver, Colorado, expenses, daily routines, friends, and a life. And within that life, there was one person who was always present. Hannah, her best friend since college. Hannah was not just any friend, she was practically part of our family. We celebrated birthdays together, had dinners, went on short road trips, and even spent some Christmases with her when her family was out of town. And about 6 months ago, Hannah started dating a man named Justin. I met him a couple of times. He seemed decent, polite, nothing particularly remarkable, but not problematic either. He was the kind of person who fits in without drawing too much attention. Never, not for a second, did it cross my mind that he would have any kind of relationship with my wife. It all started in the most absurd way possible. One afternoon, Amanda asked me to hold her phone while she cleaned the kitchen counter. It was something completely normal between us. We had never had secrets with our devices. Or so I thought. While I had it in my hand, a notification came through. I was not going to look at it, but it was unavoidable. It popped up on the screen clearly enough. It was a message from Justin. It said, "When can we see each other alone again?" I remember perfectly what I felt at that moment. It was not anger or immediate pain. It was confusion. A deep, almost absurd confusion. It made no sense. Why would Justin write that to Amanda? If it was about something related to Hannah, the logical thing would be for Hannah to be involved in the conversation. But that message did not give that impression. My reaction was strangely cold. I took out my phone and took a picture of the screen. It was not something impulsive. It was almost automatic, as if a part of me already knew that this was important. When Amanda came back and took her phone, she did not show any sign of nervousness. She did not ask anything. She did not check if I had seen anything. She just went on with her day as if nothing happened, and that was what unsettled me the most. The next day, I tried to bring up the subject indirectly. During a casual conversation, I mentioned Hannah and then Justin. "What do you think of him?" I asked. Amanda replied with total normalcy. "He is fine, seems like a good guy. I think he is good for Hannah." Nothing more. No clue, no slip-up. In that moment, I understood something important. If something was going on, I was not going to find out by asking directly. And I also understood something else. If I confronted her without proof, I would lose any advantage. She could delete messages, deny everything, and turn the situation into something impossible to prove. So I decided to wait. I do not feel proud of what I did next, but at the time, I saw it as the only way to know the truth. That same night, I waited for her to fall asleep. Amanda is a light sleeper, so I had to be careful. I let almost 2 hours pass to be sure. When her breathing finally became steady, I got up slowly. I took her phone from the wireless charger. I had mine ready to record. I did not want to waste time taking screenshots, so I recorded the screen directly while scrolling through her messages. I went straight to the chat with Justin. I did not read anything right then. I just made sure to scroll slowly, so everything would be captured. There were fewer messages than I expected, but enough. What caught my attention the most was that the active conversation had started about 2 months ago. Before that, there was practically no interaction. I also saw several calls, too many to be casual. It took me less than 3 minutes. I left the phone exactly where it was and went back to bed. I did not sleep. The next morning, when Amanda left for work, I reviewed the video, and that was when everything changed. Reviewing that video was one of the most uncomfortable and painful experiences of my life. Not because there were doubts, but because I did not know. It was all there. Direct, clear messages, with no room for optimistic interpretations. It was not an ambiguous conversation or casual flirting. It was a relationship, a physical and emotional affair that had been developing for some time. There were messages organizing private meetings, comments about moments that had already passed, insinuations that left no room for doubt, even private jokes. That kind of complicity that only appears when two people have already crossed important boundaries. But there was something that shocked me even more than the affair itself. The way they talked about Hannah was not constant, but it appeared enough to be impossible to ignore. Derogatory comments, little mockeries, criticism disguised as humor, nothing excessively cruel, but clear enough to understand that there was no respect. That left me completely thrown off. I could understand, although not accept, an impulsive affair, even a parallel relationship based on thrill or desire. But this implied something deeper, a lack of values I had not seen in Amanda before. For years, I thought I knew her. That day, I understood I did not. I spent several hours watching the video, pausing it, rewinding, making sure I was not misinterpreting anything. But there was no margin for error. It was exactly what it seemed. My first reaction was to think about confronting her immediately, but I did not. Not because I did not want to, but because I understood that doing so right then would only give me an emotional release and nothing more. I needed to think clearly. I needed to be prepared. That same day, I started looking for a family law attorney specializing in divorces. Not because I had already made the final decision, but because I wanted to understand my options. The meeting was straightforward. I explained the situation to him without going into too many emotional details. He listened to me, took notes, and then explained the process. Division of assets, timelines, possible complications. It was cold, but necessary. I left there with a strange feeling. My personal life was collapsing, but the legal process was almost mechanical. In the following days, I began to observe Amanda with different eyes. And that was when I noticed things I did not see before. Little comments that previously would have gone unnoticed, seemingly innocent comments, but with a different tone. One afternoon, looking at a photo on social media, she said, "Sometimes Hannah exaggerates a bit. She likes to get attention." She said it with a smile, as if it were a joke. But it did not sound like a joke. Another day, she mentioned that Hannah's relationship probably would not last because she always ruins good things. Those kinds of phrases started to repeat themselves. They were not direct attacks, but there was something underneath, a kind of contained contempt. And then everything started to click. It was not just an affair. There was comparison, competition, maybe even accumulated resentment over the years. I do not know exactly when it started, but it was evident that Amanda did not see Hannah the way I thought she did, and that made everything even worse, because deep down, Hannah did seem to truly love her. During those days, I kept up the routine as if nothing was happening. Breakfasts together, normal conversations, even quiet moments on the couch watching shows. And that was the hardest part, acting as if I knew nothing. There were moments when I was about to blurt it all out, but I held back. I knew I needed to close the process correctly, without impulses, without mistakes. Finally, I decided the time had come. I did not prepare a speech. I did not look for a dramatic setting. I just waited until we were at home, quiet, without interruptions. She was in the living room, checking something on her laptop. I sat across from her. "We need to talk," I said. She looked up slightly confused, but without real worry. I took a deep breath and got straight to the point. "I know you were seeing Justin." The change in her expression was immediate. It was not a total surprise. It was something more complex. As if part of her knew this moment was going to come. She stayed silent. She did not deny anything. She did not ask how I knew. She just looked at me. "I can explain," she said. I finally shook my head. I did not answer. There is no explanation that changes what I already know. The silence that followed was heavy. She tried to speak several times, but she could not find the words. I did not need to hear them either. I did not want excuses. I did not want justifications. The only thing I wanted was to close that chapter. "This is over," I said. "I have already spoken with a lawyer." That sentence did hit her. Her posture changed. The calmness disappeared. "Wait, can we fix this?" she said, moving a little closer. "It was a mistake." I stared at her. "It was not a mistake," I replied. "It was months of decisions." She did not argue that because she could not. The tears started to appear, but they did not change anything in me. Not because I did not care, but because I had already gone through the pain before that moment. That day, all that was left was to take action. I need you to pack your things, I added. You cannot stay here. That was when she truly panicked. She tried to negotiate, ask for time, propose counseling, anything. But I had already made the decision. I did not raise my voice. There was no yelling, just firmness. That same night, she started packing some basic things. The atmosphere in the house was surreal, as if we were acting out a scene instead of living it. Before leaving, she tried one last time. I am sorry. I did not answer because it did not mean anything anymore. When the door closed, I was left alone in silence, and for the first time since I discovered everything, I felt the full weight of the situation. But along with the pain, there was also something else. Clarity. The following days were strangely calm, not in the emotional sense, because I obviously was not, but in the routine. Everything kept functioning. I went to work, answered emails, went grocery shopping, but there was a constant emptiness, as if something fundamental had been ripped out without warning. The legal process began almost immediately, just as the lawyer had told me. At first it seemed like everything was going to be fast. Amanda did not put up any resistance initially. She accepted the separation, responded to the documents, and showed a willingness to cooperate. That surprised me. Part of me thought that maybe, in the midst of everything, she wanted to end this without making it more complicated. Maybe she understood she did not have a strong position, but that calm did not last long. As the paperwork progressed, her attitude began to change. Little arguments about details that did not seem important before, issues about money, assets, percentages. Nothing outrageous, but enough to drag the process out longer than necessary. Finally, what could have been a simple agreement ended up being resolved in more formal settings. It was not a war, but it was not clean either. In the end, the division was reasonably balanced. I kept the house, partly because I was already living there and had taken the initiative with the separation. She kept the car and a slightly larger portion of our joint savings. Neither of us came out winning, and I guess that was the fairest thing. When everything officially ended, I thought the worst was already over, but I was wrong. There was one pending conversation. Hannah had not spoken to her during all that time, not because she did not want to, but because she knew that what she had to say was not something that could just be blurted out. It was a truth that was going to change her life, and in a way, I felt a strange responsibility. It was not my relationship, it was not my story directly, but I was involved in it in the worst possible way. Finally, I called her. I told her we needed to talk in person. Her tone was cautious. She knew Amanda and I were no longer together, but she did not know the details. She agreed. We met at a quiet coffee shop, a neutral place. When she arrived, the first thing I noticed was that she was completely oblivious to what she was about to hear. She said hello normally, even with a small smile. That made everything harder. I did not get straight to the point. First, I told her that what I was going to tell her was not easy, that I understood if she needed time to process it. Her expression changed slightly, and then I told her, Amanda and Justin have been seeing each other behind our backs. The silence was immediate. Her face remained completely still, as if she had not understood. What? She asked almost in a whisper. I repeated the idea more clearly, and this time she did understand. Her reaction was not explosive. She did not yell, she did not cry right away. It was something quieter, a kind of shock. That makes no sense, she said. Amanda told me you guys separated because of problems between the two of you. There I understood something important. Amanda had not only cheated, she had also lied. Then I took out my phone. I have proof, I said. I showed her the video of the messages. Not everything, just enough. I also showed her parts of the conversation where it was clear it was not a one-time thing. Hannah started to change little by little. First disbelief, then comprehension, and finally anger. A contained, but very real anger. Thank you for telling me, she said after a long silence. She did not seem grateful in a positive sense. She seemed firm, determined. We stayed talking for a while longer. I tried to remain present without intruding too much. I knew that moment was not about me. Before we left, she told me something I did not expect. I am going to confront this. And she did. I was not present for what happened next, but I found out the details later. Hannah organized a casual dinner with their close group of friends. Something seemingly normal. Dinner, conversation, relaxed atmosphere at a local restaurant. No one suspected anything until she decided to speak. She did not do it chaotically. She did not yell or make a scene from the start. She simply told them what had happened. She explained the situation and then showed the proof. The impact was immediate. Reactions varied: disbelief, anger, disappointment. But there was one thing everyone had in common. No one saw it coming. Amanda tried to defend herself. From what I was told, she tried to minimize it, to justify it as something that just happened. But in that context, with everything exposed, her words carried no weight. Justin could not maintain his ground either. What marked the situation the most was not just the affair, but the fact that it had directly affected the core of the group. It was not an isolated mistake. It was an internal betrayal. The consequences were swift. The group distanced themselves from both of them. There was no formal vote or explicit agreement, but the dynamic changed immediately. Invitations stopped coming, messages went unanswered, plans were made without them. Hannah cut off contact completely, and over time, Amanda began to find herself alone, not overnight, but progressively. At first, she tried to salvage things: messages, calls, attempts to explain, but it was too late. Trust, once broken like that, is not easily rebuilt. A few months passed. I moved on with my life. It was not a fast or perfect process, but I moved forward. I learned to be alone again, to rebuild routines, to redefine what I wanted for the future. I heard little about Amanda directly, but inevitably some things filtered through. I knew she was no longer part of the group. I knew she had tried to reconnect with some people without success, and I knew that somehow she was dealing with the consequences of her decisions. I do not feel satisfaction about that, but no sadness either. I simply see it as the natural outcome of what happened. In the end, everything comes down to choices. It was not an accident. It was not an isolated moment of weakness. They were repeated decisions, maintained over time, knowing perfectly well who they were going to affect. And those decisions had a cost for everyone. Today, when I look back, I do not think so much about the betrayal itself. I think about what I learned, about how easy it is to believe you know someone completely, and about how important it is to see actions for what they are, not for what we hope they mean. The story ended, not the way I imagined for years, but it ended, and somehow that is enough. For a while, I thought everything had truly ended right there. Divorce finalized, truths exposed, everyone going their own way. But the reality is that emotional closure does not arrive at the same time as legal closure. There were weeks when I woke up with the feeling that something did not fit. It was not exactly sadness or anger. It was more like an echo, as if my mind kept trying to piece together a logical version of something that, deep down, did not have one. I started remembering moments from the past, seemingly normal conversations that, looking back now, had another meaning. Little details I had ignored before, messages she answered later than usual, outings I did not question, subtle changes in her behavior. None of that by itself was enough to be suspicious, but together, they formed a pattern. And that was one of the most uncomfortable lessons. Many times the signs are not invisible. We just do not want to see them. I also thought a lot about Hannah. We kept in touch, though not constantly. Our relationship changed after all this. It did not turn into something close in the traditional sense, but rather into a kind of mutual respect. We had both gone through something similar, from different angles. Once, months later, we ran into each other to grab a coffee. The conversation was calm, without drama, without the need to relive every detail. At one point, she said something that stuck with me. The worst part was not losing the relationship. It was realizing that the person I trusted the most was not who I thought she was. I nodded because I understood exactly what she meant. It is not just about the betrayal itself. It is about rebuilding reality, about accepting that what you thought was solid actually had cracks you had not seen. As for Amanda, she stopped being an active part of my life completely. I did not block her immediately on social media, but over time I stopped paying attention. It was not healthy to keep looking. Still, at some point, I saw some of her posts. Quotes about starting over, vague reflections about mistakes and growth, images that tried to project a life in reconstruction. I do not know what part of that was genuine and what was simply a way to maintain an image. And honestly, I did not care anymore. Not because it had not meant something to me, but because it reached a point where understanding her process stopped being relevant to mine. Justin, on the other hand, completely disappeared from my radar. His relationship with Hannah ended immediately, obviously, and from what I knew, he did not maintain anything stable with Amanda afterward either. that somehow confirmed something I had already sensed. There was not a great love story behind all this. It was not a unique or unavoidable connection. It was something else, something simpler, emptier. Over time, I began to see the situation with more clarity, not as a personal tragedy, but as a series of poor decisions made by someone who did not know how to handle her own insecurities, because in the end, everything pointed to that. Comparison, competition, the need to feel superior to someone else. And when those emotions are not managed, they end up coming out in the worst way possible. They do not justify anything, but they help to understand. And understanding, although it does not change what happened, does change how you carry it. Today my life is different, simpler in some aspects, more conscious in others. I have learned to value things I previously took for granted: tranquility, consistency, unadorned honesty. I also learned something important about boundaries, about what is negotiable and what is not. For me, trust stopped being something implicit. Now it is something that is built, observed, and if broken, not ignored. I do not know if in the future I will again have a relationship like the one I thought I had. But I do know that if it happens, it will be from a different place, more attentive, more realistic, and probably stronger. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had never seen that message, if everything had remained hidden, if I had lived for years more inside a lie that seemed stable. And although the answer is uncomfortable, it is also clear. I prefer having discovered it, even with everything it implied, because the truth, as hard as it may be, is always better than a life built on something that is not real. In the end, it is not about how the story started, or even exactly how it ended. It is about what remains afterward. And in my case, what remained was clarity. And that, even though it arrived in the worst way possible, ended up being the most valuable thing of all. Comment: I really hope this story gave you something meaningful to reflect on. I know it definitely did for me. Protecting your self-respect should always be a priority in any relationship. Setting healthy boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary. Pay close attention to how people treat you when no one is watching. True healing begins the moment you choose to take responsibility for your own peace. I encourage you to surround yourself with people who value honesty and kindness. Walking away from what hurts you can sometimes be the most loving choice you make for yourself. Remember that you deserve consistency, not just pretty words and empty promises. Let's keep reminding each other that we're worthy of real love and real respect. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.